You know, it wasn't that long ago that veganism felt like it was just taking over. Every fast food joint had a plant-based burger, influencers were getting millions of views. It really felt like this major cultural moment. But now, well, the pendulum is swinging hard the other way. The carnivore diet is all over social media, those plant-based options are quietly vanishing from menus, and the whole buzz around veganism has gotten a lot quieter. So what gives? What actually happened here? Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, so first things first, let's just look at the data. If you track Google searches for the word vegan, you see this massive spike a few years back. But since that peak, it's been a pretty steady downhill slide. That online fire, that intense curiosity, it's definitely cooled off.
And look, this isn't just about what's happening online. This stuff has real-world consequences. I mean, take New York City, a place you'd think would be a total stronghold for veganism, right? Well, in just the last couple of years, nearly a quarter of all its vegan restaurants have closed their doors for good. The trend has literally gone from clicks to closings.
So yeah, this really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? How did we go from this massive plant-based boom, where vegan food was hitting the mainstream, to this bust, where suddenly the all-meat carnivore diet is the new hot thing online? To really get why it cooled down, we have to first understand why it got so hot in the first place.
You know, the real key to understanding why veganism got so huge is that for a whole lot of people, it was never just about the food. It became an identity. It turned into this powerful symbol for a certain way of living, a certain set of values. And that's where our story really kicks off.
And for so many people, the big light bulb moment was that 2015 documentary, Cowspiracy. It basically gave a massive audience this raw, unfiltered peek behind the curtain of the industrial food system. It was, a total shock to the system. And for a ton of viewers, it changed their food choices from just a health thing to a deeply moral one, like overnight.
And wow, did that identity run deep. People weren't just eating vegan, they were vegan. The language itself changed. People literally started talking about coming out as vegan to their families. Friendships got strained over it. It became the kind of thing you'd get tattooed on your body or put right there in your social media bio. Suddenly, what you put on your plate was a huge statement about who you were as a person.
But here's the thing. That intense identity, it created a huge problem. This super rigid, all-or-nothing mindset. This kind of black and white thinking, which totally fueled the movement's early passion, is the very thing that planted the seeds for its own mainstream decline. It just created this exhausting pressure to be perfect.
So, what ended up happening is the whole conversation just spiraled into this us versus them fight, The morally pure vegans versus the evil meat eaters. And sure, that might have fired up the true believers, but for everyone else looking in, it was super alienating. Not exactly a great way to build a sustainable food movement.
And get this, even the big players in the plant-based world are now admitting this was a huge mistake. The CEO of Impossible Foods basically said their early ads were all about attacking the cattle industry, kind of painting meat eaters as these cavemen. Turns out, insulting the very people you want to buy your product, not the best business strategy.
And oh boy, the media just poured gasoline on this fire. Just look at how these two outlets covered the exact same story. A famous vegan restaurant deciding to put meat back on the menu. One side framed it as this great moral failing, the other as some political victory. See? They both took a story about a restaurant menu and turned it into a full-blown battle in the culture wars.
And of course, you can't have this conversation without talking about groups like PETA. On one hand, you have these super controversial protests that grabbed all the headlines and honestly pushed a lot of people away. But on the other hand, you have what most people didn't see, their quieter and maybe more effective strategy of buying up company stock to force change from the inside. That's a huge reason why brands like Ralph Lauren eventually dropped fur.
So you've got all this pressure from inside the movement, all this controversy on the outside. A backlash was pretty much inevitable, right? I mean, the carnivore diet didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was a direct, polar opposite reaction to peak veganism, and it was totally fueled by an internet culture that just loves extremes.
And this constant push to the extremes, it left this massive group of people stranded right in the middle. Like, what about the people who aren't perfect? The people who are trying their best, maybe eating plant-based 80% of the time, but aren't purists. There's no cool label or hashtag or community for the 80%ers.
Yeah, and this quote from one of our sources it absolutely nails it. The internet really struggles with nuance, right? It's so much easier for algorithms to push viral videos of vegan gets owned or some dude eating 20 pounds of steak. The quiet majority, living somewhere in the middle, they just don't make for good clicks.
Okay, so now that this super rigid identity-first version of veganism is fading, what's next? Well, this isn't necessarily the death of plant-based eating. It's more like a natural evolution, a move towards something a bit more sustainable, and way less defined by these strict, unforgiving labels.
You know, when you really boil it all down, maybe the single biggest reason for the cooldown is something super simple. People are just exhausted. It's not that people suddenly stopped caring about animals or the planet. It's a totally rational reaction to how overwhelming modern life has become.
I mean, let's be real. Maintaining any kind of strict diet is a luxury. It takes extra time you might not have. It takes mental effort. And yeah, it can often cost more money. When you're already stretched thin, the last thing you need is a complicated dinner. You just want something simple. And for a lot of people, strict veganism just wasn't simple enough.
And that kind of brings us to our big final thought here. As this whole veganism as an identity thing fades, what if the future of food isn't about picking a team? Maybe it's not about the labels at all. Maybe it's just about finding that messy middle ground, where we can all feel good about just, trying our best. What do you think?